Guys, welcome back to part 3 of this tutorial series. So remember, today it will be all about color. Last time I said, this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to do some drawing in black and white off camera, which I then later decided not to do because it's kind of why I started this series, is because I don't like a lot of tutorials that are just short and then people say, okay, I'll do some drawing off camera and then come back later, and then the audience wonders, what did he actually do? So no drawing off camera. I think this way it will be the most transparent way of doing such a tutorial. Of course, that means it will not be as perfect everything, but that really doesn't matter, because all the steps that I do, you can take a longer time to make them better. That's not the point about this. It's not about being perfect. It's about the steps and the logical progression in your artwork. So yeah, let's join me in talking all about color, how to inject color into the layers, different methods of doing that, and then when and how to continue painting in color. So let's get it. So here we are in Photoshop, and this of course is the tutorial drawing that I've been doing for you. Just a quick summary before we start talking about color. Up to this point we made a few layers and we painted them in grayscale, starting with a background and then some mountains, the water, some shadow, the objects, and then a mid/foreground. So we keep it really simple. You can of course stack layers and then make it complicated in grayscale. You can of course also do clipping mask. I think I spoke about this briefly last time, but the thing is that it's so easy to correct everything in black and white that you don't need to keep a very complicated layer structure at this point. It will hold you back more than it will help you, for sure. So because you can still go up here and change contrast of the layers and you know, change stuff to your liking, you're still free to do that. You can also always paint into the layers, and in grayscale without color, that is really easy to do. So anyways, another thing we did was set up the lighting. It was actually on this layer, a little construction there with the horizon and some lines to decide where the light is coming from. So we pretty much stick to this plan, and then we had a little analysis. Actually, you should have these thoughts a little bit more when doing the sketch, when setting up the first idea, because this is much more about composition. Where there's lots of stuff going on, people will look. Where there's less going on, people will not look. So there is that. And then today I brought something in here which I think I didn't have in the file last time, and that is a reference image. So I have a reference image here, and the way that it works, it can help you with coloring the image, because what you can see is that I took from the architecture, I took a very strong influence from this, some of the trees, some of the architecture, but then I also changed it up quite a bit. I used this as, let's say, a stylistic choice of architecture and of landscape, but I'm not sticking to this necessarily. This is just a starting point. So put in some spaceships and we changed the scenery quite a bit, but this can help you later with choosing color. Now you can do completely different color from your reference image. For example, you could have an entirely different reference image just for a different color palette that, like, content-wise has nothing to do with this image. But then you need to make much more of a transfer of those colors to your scene, and that's going to be harder. Also, what you can do is what I do a lot is I only use this for the sketch. Actually, a lot of the times I will look at different images, and I will, while looking at images, I will get an idea. I will take one part of this, I will take another part of another image, and then I will just make a sketch. And I also will make sketches, of course, without any reference. So it's very good to stay kind of independent from that image, because what you don't want is this image to dictate what you're drawing. That's not the idea of being a designer and a concept artist. So you have to come up with something transformative that is giving a new reason why this image should exist, right? Else this is just a copy-paste exercise, which that's not what I'm talking about in this tutorial. So anyways, first of all, let's forget about this. We just have to put color in there. And I don't know yet, because this is kind of spontaneous. I didn't decide for everything. This is the way I make up my mind is how the image develops. And that should always be your goal, at least if you have some experience. So the first thing we need is for color to appear. If there's no color, then there's nothing we can judge it by, and therefore it's all just guesswork. So easiest way to put in color is, as you know, we talked about this in the first session, we're in an sRGB color mixing mode where you have an RG and B channel, and when they amount to 255 on every channel, we get white. When they amount to 0, we get black. Excuse me. So anything in between, you can see here, while hovering over here, that RGB value down here, it changes. But what it does not do is it does always show the exact same RG and B channel. So no matter where I hover, for this example, I will get 29 on every channel. Here I will get 226 on every channel. So what does that mean? It just means one thing, and then that is that there is no color. It's not leaning towards any color. If all the RGB channels are the same number, that means we have perfect grays always. So that's all it means. So in order for us to get a color, logically, we have to break this RGB synchronicity, let's call it that. So you can do this via the color balance. I'm on this layer, and this is going to be the sky. So as soon as now you can see here, you have your CMY and you have your RG and B. So this is kind of it's a tonal representation. That is not a printing representation, because in printing there is no mixing RGB with CMYK. That is not a thing. I think that is just which way channels are leaning. So as soon as we break this apart in any direction, we get a color. So now we can play around with this, and you see how the color changes. What I want, of course, is, since this is grounded in reality, I want the bluish sky. So, and now you might wonder, how do I know when it's the right blue, and how saturated should this be? And the answer is you can't know. You can't know because the rest is gray. There's nothing to judge it against, so therefore you cannot know. Example, I could go with this guy. It doesn't matter, because I can always go through the spectrum later via the hue slider and then change it again. So, but of course this doesn't also not make sense, because now the next thing I want is the mountain, and the mountain tonally has something to do with the sky. Therefore, I need an appropriation of what the sky will look like. So, as I said, we can change this to any color in the spectrum. And then once we have something that we like, can keep that, make it more saturated, make it less saturated. So this tool, the hue and saturation sliders, is really a phenomenal tool for the beginning to just inject color. So now, of course, the saturation is hard to judge. Therefore, I'm just going to leave it like that. We could glimpse at the reference image and say, this is rather bright sky, right? So it's even brighter than I made it. So But then again, this is kind of different. They don't have the hard clouds like I do. So yeah, let's see what happens. Next up is the mountains. Mountains, I can do the same thing. And obviously, if you have any sense, now you'll be thinking to yourself, oh yeah, that's easy. I'll just color the whole image like this. But yeah, sorry to say, it doesn't work. Because this method, see, it only works if you have one color that dominates the entire layer. If you want different colors, then you already run into a wall here, because that you can't make it have now different colors the way you want it to. So, but since we're now talking about sky, atmospheric perspective, everything is in the back, everything is rather blue. It is basically only, for starters, one color. So this method is viable for the sky, for those mountains, but then it stops. Okay, so let's see. So, and again, I don't need to tune this exactly, because I can change it with the hue slider, brightness, saturation. I can fine tune this later. But first, all the color needs to appear, because if half the image is gray again, I have nothing to judge the color against. Therefore, it's impossible to say if that is the right saturation and the right tone exactly. So everything needs to have a balance. So next up, the water. Let's actually try this with the water too. It could work. But then we will run into a problem there, because those reflections, they will bring some of the color of the environment with them. So, and it can't just be all blue, right? So, but we can still also inject color over that later. So let's say we'll make the water the layer that it barely works, and then we need to do some work on it later. Okay, so, and what you want this to resemble, kind of resemble the sky's color and this mountain's color, because the majority of the color that the water takes from is color from the sky. Of course, water itself has no color, therefore all the colors in the water are just a reflection or of the surrounding, right? So it takes color from all around, and that's what will make it work or not work. If you do it, this is, depending on how well you do this. So if I oversaturate it, you see that it's no longer believable. It gets a comic-y style. It's not yet to the point where we say, oh, this does not completely not work, but it's already, it's already stretching it. So obviously, stay a little bit more conservative. I'm going a little bit more now, because I'm looking more at the foreground where there will be more contrast, right? Back here, that will already be too much if I don't change anything else. So let's say we'll stick with this for now. So now, next thing is there is a shadow layer. Well, with this shadow layer, it's that is basically only a sky blue color. Mostly shadow color also has to do with the sky's color, because it's a secondary light that is just from the atmosphere that colors the shadows, right? So in daylight, this is mostly bluish if the sky is blue at all. If it's not blue, if there's clouds, and then you cannot have the blue really shine onto the environment, then your shadows will be less blue. They will be maybe just gray, maybe almost neutral. Never completely neutral, of course, talking about nature, but less blue for sure. So yeah, this blue, let's do this the same, since I forgot about this. But now you can see, if I tone this slightly different, it already kind of starts looking as if it reflects like these structures that have no color yet. But yeah, we'll see. This will be a harder one to judge. In order for this to be correct, we have to basically bring the environment. So now this is what I would do first, and then the last thing I would do is the object, because the object is the most artificial colored thing in the image. All of the other stuff has to adhere to rules of nature. You cannot make your tree yellow or bright pink because it will just not be believable. So of course, if you're drawing alien structures and otherworldly stuff, you could do that, but that's not what we're going for here. We're going for an earthly representation of the environment and the architecture. So what we need now is we need another layer, because if I just tune this, just showing you quickly, if I just tune this, see, this doesn't work. It's like, looks like it's at night and everything is tinted blue. So because where the sunlight hits, it will be a yellowish color, mixing with whatever the house is painted, and the rooftop has a different color, and the trees need, and those plants, they need to lean into the greens, and this is not really going anywhere in terms of it's just a flat color. It just looks wrong, so can't do that. So on a different layer, now I'm doing this, we want to introduce a color, so why not just paint stuff? Let's see, what could we do? We could say, oh yeah, those houses maybe have a little bit of a bright brownish tone. Paint this in. This is 100% brush at 100% opacity, no brush pressure applied. So you can immediately see this doesn't work because it just covers up everything. So that's not good, and therefore not a viable option, because what you don't want to paint everything again in color. That doesn't make sense. That's there has to be a better way. So then the ultra legacy method of doing this is say, oh yeah, let's just do opacity down. So we have a little bit of color mixing in with a little bit of that stuff. Problem with that is still covering way too much. And the more you turn down opacity, the less color you get, and there's really no solution for this. You want more, you're covering up more, and then it's a constant battle, and you lose all the nice contrast that you have in your image. So don't do that ever. The other legacy method is using multiply as a layer blending. So instead of normal, you switch to multiply, and now what happens? We get to keep what is tonally underneath it, but we get the color plus the gray value of this tone multiplied on to everything that is under it. Not just this layer, but also all the background layers. You can see it's just going through, it's just multiplying stuff. So is that a good method? No. As I say, early 2000s method, in my opinion, because it doesn't keep the brilliance of the grayscale. So therefore, yeah, you get some color, and you could bend this and say, I'm taking the brightest color in order for me to get something that is not completely dark. But as soon as you do a darker tone, it's almost near black. So that it's just not a good representation of the whole tonal spectrum. So I think it's an outdated method. Don't do it. What you do instead is you choose overlay. Now overlay, see how this immediately gets brighter. Overlay, it's kind of similar to multiply, but there is one major difference, and which is that it ignores the grayscale value, and therefore it is not as dark. So it just puts the color value and mixes it in with whatever is underneath it. And you can see that if I choose now a color that is in the middle and I paint with it, the the impression I get, it stays roughly the same with or without the color. So in terms of contrast, it stays the most true to the black and white layer that is underneath it that you can get, while still having the possibility to choose all of the color that you want. And almost all of the intensity of color. Why do I say almost? Because since it mixes always with grays that are underneath it, there's a certain brilliance of color that you do not get from this. So for example, the most saturated I can get is this. And on a normal layer, I just realized that I was painting on the wrong layer. So yeah, that's fine. So do not paint on your grayscale layer. So that is the most saturated you will get with this mixing. While if this was a normal layer, look how much more you get. Look how much more you get. So there is a limit to this. But the limit is, it gives you pretty good range. Let's delete this layer. And also, most of the stuff is not extremely saturated if it's painted realistically at all. So this should be plenty of range. Now, what we can also do is we can do the same approach, can do a logical approach and say, okay, there was kind of I want kind of a shadow color that comes from the sky, and now this is the point where everything gets related, right? So yeah, this is the sky's color, therefore it would be good to have the shadow color in the middle. Remember, if we inject middle tones, we get to keep the impression of the underlying grayscale. So I would always start injecting color in this middle area to be sure to not destroy the contrast that you already established. So now if I do this, you can see, yeah, this is a little bit extreme. Tone it down. It's less extreme. Now we're painting. So we still have a few problems. For example, I'm painting outside the area this entire time. It's not really helpful, and it's not really that much fun, because then people feel like, oh, let's zoom in here and correct this, right? And then erase this. And if you feel like the urge of doing that, stop immediately, because this is complete waste of time. We're in Photoshop. We have much more powerful tools than that. So what we need is a clipping mask, and all our problems are solved. So the clipping mask, you apply it to the layer that is on top of the layer that you want as a reference layer. And what that means is this layer will provide the foundation for the clipping mask. This layer becoming the clipping mask will have one rule basically only, and that is you can only have something going on where there is already something on this layer. So that is not a blending option. That was me wrong. So you just select create a clipping mask, and immediately you can see you are, let's demonstrate this with a bright color, you are no longer able to draw outside of the area while being on a separate layer with a separate blending effect, which is overlay, remember, because we're coloring this. So we have a clipping mask that is on overlay, and that is the way that we paint in the color. So I can still get color. Sometimes Photoshop will just stop working so well with the hotkeys, that is, and I don't know, that's a driver issue or anything. So, well, taking color from in the environment, and then Right, I fixed it by tapping out, so sorry for that. So you can still take the color from the environment, do the same approach, paint over stuff. And then we can mix these colors in to the degree that we want it to happen. If it's too subtle, we just choose a more extreme color, and then we see what happens. So you can just spam this color. You can no longer draw outside. I would recommend also starting this process from going very bold to then becoming more and more detailed over time. But one thing in advance that I need you to know is that you cannot perfectly color an image with this method, because at one point this will be too complicated of a process. Just selecting a color, trying it out, and then counter drawing the color, and then what you do here is you establish a color composition, and when it comes to the detail, we're doing that differently. Okay, so now we need for everything to have a color, and for that this is a great tool, because you can now see how it manifests. You can say, what if there is other colors on top here for the roof. You can experiment and say, well, maybe what if that roof was like this? See, it's very quick. You can just splash color on there and see if you like it or not. So I think this is extremely valuable thing to have. And it will take you some time to get good at this, but just know that this is a really good method. If you can't get to something satisfactory with this, then that's a you problem. That's that's a skill issue. That's a judgment issue first. Not so much a skill issue, because this is just making decisions. It's not even being good with a brush. It's just making the right calls. You have to put the color in, see if you like it, and then make a decision whether to keep it or not. So you can see that where there is light, I want a brighter tone. I'm not obsessing about the details. I'm just trying to get about the tone that I want, and then I'll continue. And I will accept imperfections here, because I think that sometimes you get a more natural, better mixing of colors than if everything is perfect, because we're not going for photorealistic necessarily. This is a concept art. Is not meant to be photorealistic. It is meant to get to the point and maybe even exaggerate an impression that you then later want in the final product, whatever that is. So I need some greens. Need some greens here and here. So now I'm still on the hard round. No pressure. That means whatever color I take, it will spam it 100%. So that might not be good forever. And if you think that this is too extreme, what you can do is you can just, instead of applying color with the hard round, you can do it with a soft brush that will then again react to pressure. So that's a good idea, but before you do that, there needs to be color everywhere. So if you start the soft brush on a gray, it's no good, because you're not getting enough color. You need to have saturated color in order to judge what you're doing. And you can't do that like very, very slowly on gray and sprinkle a little bit of color, you will lose sight of the whole spectrum of colors. You start with what is logical. I spent the shadow color in there, and now I'm doing other colors. I'm doing greens and different blues and different yellows for that. And then I can glimpse at the reference and say, is this what I was looking? Is this what I imagined? And is there something I like more in the reference than what I just did? And in the beginning, of course, the answer will always be yes. But don't get it mistaken, because again, you don't want this image to dictate what you are painting. This is not your boss. So you should have your own idea. If you want all the roofs to be, let's say, turquoise, then you do that. There will be a solution for that. For me, I like, for example, I like this. I like this orangey color. So, because roofs are kind of nice, bright, I just want to try what happens. The rest, yeah, we'll see about the greens. So, let's first see what happens if I do this. It's not too bad. And then now I start a little bit thinking, is this correct? Because now I took something from there. I have to control it. I have to measure it. And now I feel like, this is kind of not the same. Why is it not the same? That's because a photo has complicated color. You will see that in a photograph, wherever you take color, it will never be just one color. It's a lot of colors next to each other, and what you get when you drop the eyedropper tool is basically is a gamble. So it's not as easy if roof has X color, I'm applying X color and then I get exactly the same roof. This will never happen, so just be aware of that. It's not so easy to imitate a photo's colors. So what I need to do is I need to get another sample. Yeah, that's brighter. And then I will try again on the sunny side of this. See if this gets me a little bit of a brighter impression. So, but yeah, there's a limitation here, because see that I have a really bright color, but it doesn't appear as bright, and that's because it still mixes with the underlying grayscale image. So it doesn't give me the brilliant bright orange that is in the photograph. I will not get this because the grayscale is already different from that. So if I want that, I have to change something fundamentally with the piece. So I painted all of this darker than is the photo. So therefore, I cannot just get the same result. It's impossible. So you have to accept that, right? It's not always. You're not imitating the exact same thing. So I'll continue for now. And what I want to detach myself from this. It's only the reference, is only serves giving me an idea, and then at a certain point I want to detach from it. Let's see the greens they use. This is actually a nice green. I like this kind of more a yellowish green. So let's see if we apply this green like so, what do we get? Maybe even. So there is a certain look to Mediterranean trees with that once the color is really on point. So there was nothing wrong with my trees. They could be that shade of a more bluish green, and I've done this a lot. I like the bluish green trees a lot, but maybe this time do something different. And now, since I'm using pressure now, as you can see, I can vary the intensity intuitively. So if I want this tree to be greener than this, I just push less down on my brush. So I want here to be everything to be brilliant. And then there is stuff like I need this all the stone. I need that to not be blue, or not be as blue. And then some of the blues I can leave, like in a watercolor painting where everything then dissolves into the blue. That stuff you can do. And where there's less light, there will be more blue, of course. So as we move along here, we're mixing stuff. And yeah, slowly work towards a result. I don't like this single turquoise roof here, so I'm going to change that. And then here, the side that gets a little bit more light, let's make it less blue. Pretty much the way it's here, so that would be fine. That would be fine. There's some of the rocks in here. And you can see that now this, yeah, it starts to get quite colorful. Another very strong thing that we have at our disposal is, because you can see that I'm still not very accurate, another very strong tool is that we can switch this back to normal and see the actual colors that we applied. And then take that actual color, switch it back to overlay, continue painting. So there is that possibility as well, which comes in handy when you want to correct something. So for example, over here, yeah, that's a little bit too bright. Sorry, this Photoshop keeps bumming me. So I want this back basically. And then you can correct little stuff. Just be aware, if you're too perfect, you're also boring. So don't be too perfect. So keeping a little bit of the extreme sunlight in here. Now, I know where these blues were. So, but what you can see is that switching around this color the way I do here is kind of not always very convenient. And the more complicated it gets, the less convenient it is. Because you don't want this switching around, taking color all the time, and you will, when you mix in, you will not be able to anticipate the exact result. You get around this color by mixing it with the gray. So I'll continue this for a little. I don't know why it always keeps denying this. So what I want to do first, now let's get back to the very logical part, is I want first to appear color where I know that there is a certain color. Where there is the greens, I want the greens, and where there's something else, stone, I want there to be the stone color. And this is my first objective, to have everything colored roughly the way I imagine it to. So is there anything I missed in terms of greens, in terms of stone color? We said we had this, and sometimes I do this, like now I free guess this color and I see what I get, and sometimes you get a nice result. And it's also sometimes good to not have the exact same color everywhere, to just have something that is close, gives it a more painterly, more interesting look sometimes. Of course, the less experience you have with this, the more you need to stick to like raw logic. So all these houses are yellow, apply the same yellow first to every house and then see what happens. Then judge it and then go from there. So of course you cannot just be free with everything and be a genius. That's not what this tutorial is about. If you were that, you would not need the tutorial. So none of us is just that genius on average. We just need to try things, make sense of it, and then apply it in a way that it makes the most sense. Yeah, this I don't want it really to be. Let's say this is metal, different than what is underneath here. So that would make sense. I want this to be brighter. And then I want some of that red. Yeah, I want this to be around the same, right? Like this maybe brighter. Even more bright. And then at one point I cannot get any more. So there's a little trick that sometimes works. You want more intensity on that color. I can't get it. Now it's not that bright, and I can't overcome this now from the mixing in with the underlying gray. If you duplicate this layer, all the color will blend over it again. See what happens. Boom. It makes everything even more saturated, though you might not have thought this was even possible. But yeah, it is. So now the parts that you want to be exactly that extreme saturation, also of course you could tone it down via the opacity slider, and you could also go and just take a big old eraser and just erase everything out that you don't want to be so bright. For me, that is everything but the rooftops, because the only thing I like about this change is what's happening on the rooftops. So all of the rest, basically, I don't need any of that. I don't need any of that. So hooray, a little bit more bright color up top here. So this, no, don't want any of this. Can this make it more vibrant? Yes. But also there's a point where you just overdo it. So I'm tuning this down maybe a little bit, and then at one point I can keep it. So, and then I can continue the same process. These always blend together. So I need to really make up my mind what I want, how much color I want. So for example, do I want more color here? Not sure. What I do know is that I want these to be brighter, because there will be more light towards here. And then yeah, not everything needs to be so blue. Let's see what happens with this. And now I'm drawing softer. So see what, yeah, this is okay. And also, of course, you can still go through the spectrum and decide if there is a tone that you absolutely do not want, or maybe you like the overall impression but you feel like, oh, it's just is too yellow. What you do then is you go back to hue saturation, you go to your yellow channel and you play around with it, and you will find that a lot of your greens contain yellow. That is also a revelation there, but see what you can do. You can tune this to your liking. You can also say, I want the yellows to be more red. And you can get that. But now this is going more towards a sunset theme, whereas the sky does not support that theory. So
it's not something we can do without changing anything else. So I will not do this. I will stick to what I have. I like the yellows. Like the yellows, like the kind of pinkish rooftops. Did I say pinkish? No, I mean, what is it? It's not, yeah, it's more like a rose color. Yeah, I guess. So, yeah. Like this. The trees, let's see. Let's see the reference for last time. Reference is more vibrant, is more contrasty even. So, I could have some of that. I could have some of the greens that are yellowish and brighter. So I could mix these in here, for example. It's not getting bright enough. Maybe I did not choose a bright enough color. So yeah, you see what happens. And then glimpse back and forth on it, just, yeah, to reinforce maybe some ideas. There will be some light here, and maybe there is some light here. I don't need to be very accurate with the color because the sum of accuracy of the shape is of course baked into the grayscale layer, so that works automatically pretty much. So yeah, at one point I will have the color that I desire to have, and I'm leaving this side to be more dull because I want really to be the focus on the other side much more. Let's see, maybe a little bit more saturation on here. Just, yeah, to sell this coming together. Could be good. So yeah, we're getting a wild mix. I'm keeping some of this color. I'm not completely erasing all of these colored spots because I think that the bleeding of color is sometimes is really nice. So I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to be, yeah, create something that really is attractive, much more than that. So some bright reflections in the window from the sky, that could make sense. Maybe even one here. It's not just as bright. So yeah, little stuff. And then we'll see, maybe those rocks are brighter sometimes. So now you'll realize that we're hitting a wall here. There's only so much that you can do. Even if you were to zoom in and try to paint this perfectly, it will only work so well. So at one point, we have to call this and say, okay, there's not much more we can do here. So, but what we can do is, of course, go back to maybe our other layers and then judge them again and say, okay, is this still the mountain color that I want, or do I want the mountain to be darker and more saturated? Preview, yes or no? I would say not as dark. More saturated, yes, gives the whole thing more vibrancy. Maybe more green or more blue. Now, more of this does not make sense because what happens is that the bluest you get is the blue from your sky, because that dictates atmospheric perspective. And that means I cannot go over the spectrum of the blue. I will get an artificial color that does not make sense. So this is off limits. What I can do is I can go more towards the green, because that would mean that there's some of the green mixing with some of the blue. Maybe this mountain is full of trees or of plants, flora, fauna, that kind of stuff. And then I would have to go maybe darker, maybe like this. So now I'm saying, yeah, it's a little bit, I guess it's more towards the green. That I can do, but also there's a limit to that. That goes too green. Now that's almost greener than those trees. Doesn't make sense, because it has to mix. It has to be less green as it goes away. Like atmospheric perspective rule states that the further away stuff gets, the more it gets the same and not more different. So it has to get more of the same. So again, tuning this, it requires some experience. We could have this, we could have that, what we had before. It was not wrong. It's too green for me. I don't know. A little bit more could be the case. Let's see what reference says. Reference says, yeah, there's closer stuff, but this is more of the mountain that we're looking at. So yeah, could be that. Do I have the same blue though? I don't know. Not quite. I think I'm more on the cyan side of blues. So yeah, let's see what would happen if I was to tune this more towards the blue. Not with this. Why do I keep... I was correct. So yeah, more towards the blue a little bit, more saturation a little bit. Yeah, this could fly. This could be okay. Where is the limit to saturation? I would say, depending on what you want, it's somewhere here. So yeah, it was like this before. Maybe let's do it like this. I can go back to the sky, of course. We still have, now that is in color. I can now apply gradients and stuff, make that sky kind of different. But let's not just do this right now, because we should continue putting color into all of the layers. So that includes, of course, the object. Doing the same thing, because I know this is the only way to do this satisfactory, is to do the same setup, right? Clipping mask layer connected to this object's layer, and then now via overlay blend in the color. So going the same route. First, yeah, there's plenty of sky color, because it's a reflective material. I want most of this to be a reflective material. See how it integrates immediately much better. So now the question is, does this have a color or not? If this has a color of its own, then yeah, this is more or less dull or more or less reflective. If I make it perfect, the same color, reflecting everything, the exact color, what that means is I'm going for this chrome look, where everything is a perfect mirror. It's very, very bright and shiny. So maybe not quite that. And then I have a different material over here that will be more of a matte material. And so I have two materials now to deal with. So first, let's get the main material, right? Which is the kind of metal, semi-reflective material, I would say. Matte metal, maybe, yeah, like this. So I have to then see what happens if this all gets bright. And if that makes sense, if I like that. So towards the upside, it reflects the sky and it reflects some extremer blues, I would say. Maybe even like this. And yeah, so that could very well be the case. But then at one point, remember, I already added color everywhere, even though now in comparison it looks a little bit gray. I'm going back to my softer brush, and I want to mix in some colors. So everything that is more towards the upside, reflecting more the sky on towards the side, it will be bluer. And then everything that reflects more of the environment, it will be less blue. For example, I can now maybe even justify to... Why are you doing this? So I can now justify to put in maybe some tones from this environment even. Maybe it makes sense to have it reflect some of those tones. I'm not sure of that, right? It's just, you can try if it makes sense. And then of course down there, it can also reflect. It can reflect some of the water again, which would be blue again. So this will not reflect a whole lot of the environment. I wouldn't think so. We'll just, yeah, have to see. And then of course there's the possibility of it having its own color. So we need to look at the small thing again, and then figure out, for example, the matte color. What will that be? Will that be also blue, or will it be yeah, green? Will it be more like black in black rubber? Maybe dark gray stuff. So all of that is possible. I don't want to make it too colorful because the rest already has plenty of color, and there's going to be some artificial lights later that will also provide color. So I'm not looking to make this extremely colorful. Let's see what happens if I do this. It's a little bit green. Go back. Make this more saturated, maybe. Don't be perfect. It's the same rule. If you're perfect now, you zoom in, you try to do this perfect, you're much too slow. You're so slow. And then you will not be able to make up your mind. I want quick changes, and then I want to really fast make up my mind. Now, it kind of works better that this is a different material. So this starts to work. I can see now these materials. Maybe on top is a little bit more reflective. Right, so, and then the rest is more white, metal, glossy kind of material. You can also use the soft brush if you need to blend. Well, let's see, maybe I get some of this in. I actually like this counter color. Maybe that's a good idea to have. And then maybe some of those greens, dark greens. Yeah, that's too much. Yeah, I don't really like this too much. So if you had it reflect really extremely, you need to go for something like this even, right? Little spots that just reflect. But now you can immediately feel that we're going into this chrome direction, right? So now that's a very bright reflection. So you might not want this, and I don't want this. So yeah, let's not do it. And yeah, sometimes I sometimes also like to just counter paint stuff, because then there's some remainers of what was a more bold decision that maybe is still pretty nice to have. maybe then where there is an edge of the thing, it reflects more of that. So but yeah, you can really lose some sleep over this. So this is the harder part of really painting something is compelling and that makes a lot of sense. So we need to fumble around with this a little bit just for it. And also, like, some of the shape is crooked here, like this doesn't make all that much sense, but I will fix this later. There's lots of stuff always going on at the same time, which is why you want your grayscale foundation to be really solid, because then it's very good now if we don't need to worry about perspective anymore, and we don't, because perspective is something that I made sure that it's pretty on point. So no need for that we don't need to basically inspect that again in a major way. So I want there to be maybe like this. And then I could also see what happens if I change some of the colors with the spectrum. So just change all the colors obviously doesn't work, because it will immediately not integrate anymore. But you can say, okay, how about only the blues? Well, there's too many blues for that to work. So now you can see that this is too homogeneous for us to be able to make a nice difference or a good change anymore. Maybe try the cyan. Could be more, could be less. Could lean more towards the blue. But see how this also doesn't make sense, because that is just colors that don't happen in the environment. So you get kind of, yeah, there's a limit here. There's a clear limit. So if I, for example, want something to change with this color, I have to paint that pretty much. I would just have to directly paint it. Maybe paint darker gray. Let's see. Maybe like this, yeah, why not? And then also there's a point where you don't want the same color everywhere, because that will just, it's not very painterly, right? So you have to be satisfied with what you see here at a certain point. But remember, it's not all over. We can again do another pass of colors. Clipping mask that is on overlay. Now before on the other layer, I just copied the same layer just to show you guys how it looks. This will not work here with overshoot color. I already know that. So, but I can do another color, another colorization layer basically, and then see what happens if I make more subtle changes. For example, I want it darker down there, but in a blending way. So let's see. So I need this color, and then I need it to be dark. So this would be nice, I think. Good change, yes or no? Yes. So that's another very strong thing about this. You just switch the layer off, see if you did a good change or not. And if you did, you just commit to it. You just immediately keep it. You say, yeah, that was exactly what I was looking for. Down there, this kind of a tone, foundation. Have this really be darker. Now I can mix in tones again. If Photoshop lets me, that is. So could do this more, but now you see that this is not, it's getting a rainbow effect. This is not good. So the subtle thing is much better. Yeah. So once we like this, we keep it. Let's see. Same could be done for this thing, but they don't need to all be the exact same. So now see how I can change shape a little bit with this technique. And I also like the fact that there is a blue manifest here. So did we get somewhere here? I think so. So now what are the next steps, right? We have color now everywhere. Now what we can't lose sight of, that we do the right still the right decision making, and that is from the big decisions to the smaller decisions. So I'm not going to now insert a tiny front light here and see how it looks, because the rest is underdeveloped still. So we need to always make sure that we make a big decision if there is a big decision. So let's see what there is. So see how now the shadow doesn't integrate well anymore. So first thing is we need to change that shadow. It looked good when it was gray, doesn't look good now, so therefore we need to change it. There's something underneath this shadow too, which there is kind of a problem that it covers up all of my reflection. So a quick fix for that would be to just make it a little bit transparent. See how now the structure shines through again? That makes it already much better. But then I need to tune brightness and color also for that. So this was too bluish. It needs to be more like this, right? Not too green though. So somewhere here, then maybe it's darker. At one point goes downhill. That is not good. So because the water surface is bright, it's daylight, there's light coming, a lot of light. So we don't want this to be too dark. So this is a good thing. We can see a reflection, we can see the ripples through the reflection, and then we can just also put different color in later. So usually I would have thought of this earlier maybe, because the nature of the tutorial, I didn't pay attention to this. But as you can see, you can fix everything. It doesn't matter. So we have this now with a certain opacity. I like it. Problem is now I cannot really paint too much on a 70% opacity layer. That's fine. We'll just combine it with the water surface later, and then we continue painting. So for now, this is, in my estimation, this is kind of fixed. So again, made for a better look right there. So we can, let's see for a second how this looks without a sketch. Without a sketch, it looks like this. And that's pretty good. Should look good without a sketch. I can see some minor stuff here. For example, plants on the building side are not really green. Here, that is something that kind of went under in the sketch. So yeah, we can fix this, of course. Can take some of the green. We go back to our color layer, and then yeah, we still have the power to paint the green in a little bit, right? Again, doesn't need to be perfect. I just need some green there, because so that I can continue working on it later when I leave this mode of just injecting color via the overlay layer. And we will leave this mode very soon. So this is like the last few things maybe that we do in this fashion. And then because as I said it before, you're hitting a wall at some point and you're realizing, oh, it's getting complicated now to add more color the way we did it. So of course you can do this a little bit longer. You can take 1-2 hours more of that, which I will not do right now for the sake of this tutorial not being too long. But at one point you have to stop because the problem is now we're mixing. We're not painting with opacity, and at one point you want to go back to painting with opacity because you want really to make a decision. I want the red here, I want the bright green here, and it needs to show up, and it needs to show up with 100% opacity, and this is not what's happening now. So we need to make sure that there is that this can happen again. So what do we do? Next big decision has to come. So I want to experiment one thing with the sky, because the sky is just one flat layer as of right now. That's not so good. That's not really how a sky works. In reality, it will have light coming from down there. In the reference, it's much brighter. I don't care about that, but I don't have white here. So I have some room, for example, to blend over this. If you're not sure if you're doing this, if this is a good idea, then you do a separate layer, and you do it on a separate layer there, and this way you will not lose anything. So I want it to be brighter down there. And then what I want is I want it to be bluer in one corner. Light comes from there, right? Remember? We established that. So that doesn't mean it needs to be like this, always, like the way I'm doing. Subtle blend, but you can feel now there's a more of a light coming from that direction maybe. I don't want to overdo it either. So just have this little effect that you have the feeling of that you get more of an atmospheric blending, I would say. And then what you can also do is go back to that cloud and make, maybe make parts of that cloud whiter, because the cloud is also lit from the back, remember? So therefore, it could be very possible that this is just that this will be illuminated like with the same rules as the ship, as everything else. Because the cloud, you might think it's transparent, but really most artists will tell you that you should treat clouds like solid objects, especially in these normal weather conditions. You should not really make transparent layers, anything like that. That will just be too much. And now I'm doing something that is you could consider a composition decision, which is I like this structure because it points towards where I want it to point, and I can even emphasize this with some clouds. It's like you paint an arrow here that says there, right? It's a little trick, compository trick that it can be good. So I'm making more stuff going on, slightly more, slightly more, slightly more. This is where stuff is going on. Do this 100% white. You see, yeah, this gives it depth, and at the same point now, what was the cloud color becomes now the shadow color of the cloud, and what I just painted becomes the illuminated part of the cloud. So therefore, the cloud becomes now 3D through only those two layers. I can counter paint this and say then I want this to be a little bit the opposite down here. I want this a little bit grayer down here. Let's see. does not show up. Why? Oh yeah, because I hit the selection and the selection of course was still active. So yeah, my bad. These clouds a little bit, maybe that is too gray. Maybe we need it bluer. And maybe also, I'm not sure about this. Maybe this happens. I don't know. Maybe not. And also we could, of course, counter paint it all also very heavy. You could say, okay, cloud, there is a shadow of that cloud here. Let's see what would happen if we would do that. So with some of that color, and then yeah, that could also be true. A little bit harder to sell. I'm not going with that. It's too much for me, too much contrast, too much stuff going on. Of course, you can always like mitigate this a little bit, counter paint it, but then that's another edge of the cloud. Would that really be visible? I don't think so. So yeah, let's not do this. And yeah, it was this selection, and then yeah, now it's there. Don't worry, you can paint out stuff. It really doesn't matter. You don't need to worry so much about destroying stuff. We're on a separate layer. I didn't destroy anything, so it really doesn't matter. Once you like what you see, you can keep it. Let's see, maybe we do this a little bit. Does it have an effect at all? Not so much. Oh yeah, there's something over it, of course. Yeah, maybe that's good. Maybe that's not bad. So yeah. Then over here, that's fine. And yeah. So we did start to do some legitimate painting there. Now, next decision is whatever we decided now here, of course it needs to apply for the water, and then we have a reflection in the water, and that is also doing something. So next thing, yeah, we go back to the water. There's still the shadow thing. Can we bake it in? Yes, I think we can. I'm not too keen about keeping stuff separate. There's always a solution. So I can just merge these. Some people would freak out, but now that gives me more power. I can also do a clipping mask, because now there's really the point I was getting at is, see, this stuff you cannot do on just the overlay layer. So at one point, what we're doing, you can keep your precious overlay layers, but any change that comes now, like to the water, I can also do it on a clipping mask layer. But instead of having it overlay, I will now keep it a normal layer. This will allow me to choose and cover up with any color that I want again. And that, it was not good to colorize the grayscale, but it's now good to draw the details and to really get the color that you take from the eyedropper and you take from the rest of the image. And now there is color everywhere, so this becomes very important again. So I want to change something on the water. What do I want to change? I want to blend, because I did just blend on here, and now see that this is slightly different. We're going with a darker version of this, and then I'm blending this in here, and I'm basically doing what the reflection does. Here I'm keeping it brighter. I might even keep it very bright here. See, go over this, have this blend up more, because it's also more in the distance, gets more the same, remember? Whereas here, towards the front, contrast increases. So have to, yeah, it has to go up somehow. So little tiny change, see what kind of a difference this makes immediately. Also, there's another issue, is that I need some of these colors now in the water, obviously, right? So what's good is that this color, I can sell this from the ship. That's fine, more or less fine. But now we already painted some ripples here. So now let's look again at the reference a little bit. See how there's the green in the water, how there is clearly the tone from the buildings in the water. We need that to show up. That way we sell the water. Now there's a difference. These are much more smaller ripples than I drew, but that doesn't matter. We don't know the weather that day. We don't know. Maybe it's calm, and so my version is more calm. This is more a windy version, I would say. But it's really, that's now a preference. That's now a lot more environmental storytelling. You can decide that. So see how these colors bleed into the water, and we need that to happen. So therefore, and you can see that we're not looking at this a lot, really. It doesn't matter too much. So now I'm at this point where I will just commit to what I have here, because I figured that all the small little subtle changes, I can do them. I can do them even after I committed to this. So I will merge them. So now, yeah, I committed to this, and maybe you're very scared to do this. But now let's see immediately the advantage that I gain from that. I have one layer now where I can again influence all the colors in their full opacity this time. I can say, yeah, the yellow, change the yellow a little bit, make it a little bit less saturated, make it a little bit brighter, the yellow. A little bit of the brighter yellow, again, more saturated. Is this better? Yeah, almost better. Not bad. So fine tune the color. Let's see the reds. What is affected by the reds? If you crank up saturation, you will see what is affected by the reds. So now, do I want to crank this up a little bit? I don't know. Not really. That's fine. Can we change it a little bit? We can. See, that's sometimes cool. So this is also cool. Look, I like this too. So at one point, of course, now the red is too much in the rest of the environment for this to be able to turn into 180 degrees. That's not happening. But I can fine tune it here. And I can saturate it a little bit. Let's go to the greens. Greens, we have plenty. Do we like the saturation of the greens? I think so. Maybe the greens are more yellow. I kind of like that. See, more blue, and then they can become a little bit more yellow. I think this is not a bad thing. A little bit more yellow, why not? And then a little bit brighter. That is now a matter of taste, right? Is a preference thing. So the lightness, the saturation. Yeah, I think it's a good change. I'll keep it. So you see, you can do this, and then you can do something else. You can say, how about the entire contrast of this layer? How about this entire thing, like, would be elevated? Now, see, if it was too dull for you, you can elevate it. If you elevate it too much, it gets also kind of gets this desaturated look, but you can go back into the saturation settings and then crank it up again. Of course, there's a limit to that. You cannot, like in a 3D render program, change it to anything you like, but you can bring up contrast a little bit, especially in the bright part here, which I think is suitable for this image, a little bit like that. And the mids, can control the mids a little bit. So and I stop where I like it, and then I compare it to what it was before. So yeah, I think I like this. Liked it before also, that's fine. I like here to have it a more weight, because the rest is rather bright of the image. So once I like it, you hit OK. Can do some measuring of the color. It's pretty bright. It's good. This is not a reflective surface. It's not on the very bright part. And then this for the roof, that's also okay. Makes sense. This mixing of the blue and the gray, the browns, that also makes sense. So we can make it also. We can paint more on this, and we will. So, but now the mission was control this one last time, and now get some reflections from this. So you will say, I already have the ripples. They're baked in here though, so I cannot access them. So damn it, basically, should I have done this on a separate layer? The answer is yes and no. There's a solution for almost everything. There is a solution for this, but you might not know it. So if you had this on a separate layer, yeah, it would be easier to color it right now. And I'm talking about just the ripples, right? There is a different solution though. So we just make another clipping mask layer. Doesn't even matter if it's a clipping mask. So now let's get some of the greens. And let's say I want this green to reflect in here. See how this is kind of hard to do. It will be here, and then there will be a darker blue that reflects in here. Yeah, that's kind of a pain. This dark stuff, it would reflect here maybe like so. So this looks not really very good, right? But let's continue. Would be some green here because we're playing what if, right? That's a lot of the early stages. We're not really in early stage anymore, but you know what I mean. It's like introducing color. You play a little bit of what if. What if this would reflect like this, and then we need to see if that would, in theory, look good. So this we want it in here. Ripples don't really reflect that. Now, don't make mistakes here because you're looking down on the water and the reflection is going up again. So you will not see the color that is on the roof. That is a very common mistake because from the perspective of the water, you're looking up. You're not seeing on the roof. So therefore, no reflection of the roof in this water, right? So, and I'm pretty sure, see, no reflection of the roof. This, it doesn't show up. It's only the sides that show up here. So, and the flatter the roof, the less reflection you get. Like, it's an angle thing. So if this is maybe this slightly, but this, no chance, no chance. Okay. So what am I doing here? Right, this would reflect here. Now this looks terrible, you will say, yeah, and that's a blending issue because I want this to only happen in the ripples, and for that we have a solution. The solution is called blending options. So this determines how much the layer will blend over the underlying layers. That's the option that I want you to focus on. So when it's too bright, I don't want it. So watch what happens. See that? I just exclude the bright area from here until this will only apply to the ripples. And now you get some pixelation. That is because this is hard capped. Now if you hold Alt key, you can separate this and you will get less. You will get less pixelation, only also a little bit less of the tone. But you see what happens here. You basically blend it into only the ripples. this does not concern you because there is no darkest tone that you don't want it to apply to. So therefore we inject a little bit of that. Now this layer blending option is active forever until you change it. So what you can do now is do the same thing. You just paint on the ripples via this blending layer. So yeah, this is not the most intuitive way to do it, but that was like a band-aid solution now since I baked the ripples into the layer already. So, but you can see that of course it looks much better than without it. So that's good, right? We have done something good. Also we can go over here and do the same for the reflection of the ship. We just paint in a little bit of stuff here. So now I'm not using this as the perfect solution. So this is just again a foundation, and then I will have to keep painting a little bit more to make this good. Right? So this is just not terrible anymore. And also we have the atmospheric blending that still applies to it. I left this out now because this gives it more of a surface look, but it's complicated with this gradient to keep painting on here. That's not so easy. So at a certain point, of course, this we might just want to commit to this. In that sense, at one point I will combine these. And sometimes you cannot combine if you have one clipping mask ticked off. So therefore, can release the clipping mask temporarily, merge these layers, and then apply it again. And this only affects this area where it will go out of bounds with the other layer. So now what I can do is I can go here into these ripples and then continue painting these ripples basically. So for example, I did not really account for this house in a major way, but this facade is something that you will see. Now I have to be a little bit more careful. I'm using now just the lasso tool, and then I'm painting in some reflections. And those reflections, of course, they also need to be a little bit contrast to the water surface. And you can do the same thing for other things, for the tree, for example. If you want, this is maybe not dense enough over here to sell the reflection of the tree. I'm just hiding the selection, because with this active you cannot see what you're doing. So if you hit Control H or Apple H on your keyboard, you just hide the selection, but it's still active. So that way I can see where I paint much better. And if you want it again, you can continue to use it. And then the same, of course, yeah, I can also disengage it and then do a new one. Maybe let's do this, some of this rock. Wherever there's bright, it will reflect a little bit more. For example, then brightness of a rock over here. Exaggerate this a little bit, and then continue this whole side. Failed to put in really the color of the building there. Also doesn't need to be so exact, because those ripple reflections are not super only right? Very not as geometric. That's a kind of a stylistic exaggeration that I made there, right? So just be aware of that. So we might need this color more, and when it comes more, you will see that it makes tonally, it will start to make more sense. I draw this with a soft brush because I don't want it to be the exact same color, because I'm aware that in the water it's the duller, it's not the same brilliance, right, all around. So you can of course also paint, just paint it with a brush like this. I can take from here and then paint more ripples towards this building. Now we're doing more painting. So yeah, that's an option that you also have. So that other tree will not show up like this, I presume. So this, I think this is bullshit. Of course, everything gets denser down there because there's much more going on. You will only rarely reflect the sky, but it's good to have, because where the water hits there's ripples, and then where it hits it sometimes will reflect the sky, so you can see that where the water edge is on that. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm just trying out what looks good. I want some, yeah, this pretty clear water. We could go outside with some of the reflections. Not doing this just yet. So yeah, we need something really dark here. Sometimes you need a bold decision again. Don't be like just playing around with oh yeah, if you're too subtle all the time, then yeah, that will also give you some commitment issues. Let's see, there's some darkness here, therefore yeah, we will have some here that will maybe influence this a little bit more. And then the same, right? Let's see. I'm eyeballing this now. This is not about being perfect. If you do it okay, it will look good. Doesn't need to be all so perfect, because the stuff that has the most contrast is it will reflect the most obviously, and then the other stuff, it will not be quite as a clear reflection. So that's just the nature of it. So and remember, we're on a separate layer. Well, we're not now, we could be, but we're still on the water layer. So it's not too much commitment really. So of course the same thing, it applies here. We can go over here and do some painting here in the brights and also in the darks. There's some one more technique I want to give you for today, and this is regarding these ripples. Because what you can also do is smudge these ripples, right? So you have any brush that you like, you have a smudge effect. You can choose any brush tip for that. Just make sure the strength is okay. It should be at least 50% or 30%, and you can go up to 100%. So what that does is I can smudge here. See how this is pretty good to create a water effect. So I just need a different size of this now, and then we can go to town. Now this is a more stylistic thing now that we're creating, but you will see how this is really a very strong tool here. Like you get immediately, you get this, you can expand the ripple basically very, very long with that, depending on the strength again. I like to use 50%. See what you like with that. See how I just made some ripples with just one tool. And this is really something that I cannot overstate how well, the tool is important, but the decision what to do is even more important. Now we're creating this really where you can start to feel that it is water. And you can stack layers here still. You can still go over all of these layers and make it, how would you say, blend over everything again. So you're not really committing too much to something. So I like to do this a little bit where the water connects here. You have to be careful too. Still use your head and think, you know, you can get away with a stronger thing here in front because it's closer, and then I can tune down some of that because we're still have the option to atmospheric blend. We have the atmospheric blend still going on. I could now do this over. If I smudge over this, that means I cannot go back and change this. I have to go over it again with a different layer. So for example, if I commit to this, don't get a heart attack. I can keep doing this now, of course. Right? I can keep doing this. Pretty extreme. And yeah, if I want to change it, I can blend directly on the layer, of course. I can say I need this darker. Maybe this needs to be darker. I kind of like this darker because then you feel like there's a shadow. It's not all the same atmosphere, right? From the mountain. Could be that it's in the mountain too, that the mountain is shadowing off a little bit of that area. So if you're thinking it, you can apply it immediately with a simple large tool. So of course that of some of you it will be some kind of mystery how you're doing that, and the answer is experience, but also don't obsess over the detail too much, because if you always I need to zoom in and do the detail, no, we're not there yet. If I were to do that, I would have a problem, because then every time I do a bold decision I destroy all my detail. It's not good. It's not the way you should do it. You should do the detail in the end. And now I'm just trying to think and manifest on paper what comes to my head. I think this could be darker here, then therefore the mountain is darker here, and then therefore maybe do a quick clipping mask, and then see we go and overlay on this layer and turning down this further. Is this good, or was it better like this? Maybe it's good, and then maybe I need to counter do this, erase this a little bit. Was good over here, and then here down here it's darker, then it goes together with the reflection a little bit better. I like it. I like the depth it gives, so I keep it. So I say, you know what, you don't need to merge right away, of course. I'm just doing this to make a point. You like it, you keep it, and then you continue. You start to ask same questions over again. What is the next decision? Mountain here is pretty simple still, so maybe also I made an edge to the mountain here where I don't really want it, so maybe that's not good. Maybe that's a bit complicated shape. So, and then I can say, okay, you know what, I also want to smudge the mountain a little bit, because this is also a thing that you can do some painterly changes here, over here. See how this creates a little bit of depth, and I haven't touched any fancy brushes yet, mind you, right, in the entire process. It's not about the brush, and this is the statement I will leave you with today. It's not about the brush. The brush tip will not make you a good artist. The brush tip is just a stylistic choice. Anything you can do here, you could do it with the round brush. Everything I did up till now, you can, in theory, do it with a round brush, and almost everything I did with a round brush, by the way. So, guys, I hope you like this. As always, turned out quite long, but I think you're getting the point by now. Of course, I'll put timestamps and you can go back to whatever section you like and look at it. But I really think that, yeah, this tutorial, once it's finished, this will be probably like 7-8 hours or something. But the advantage of this is, I don't know if this has been done, because the tutorials I know are much shorter, and it's usually they either speeding up the process or painting off camera, which I'm choosing not to do in this. So yeah, in the end, you will not have the most perfect, most refined image, but I also will show you everything. So there is nothing that I do in secret on this image. You're able to see all the steps I'm doing and why I'm doing them. That's why I'm talking so much, because this is only a learning experience if you understand why I'm making the choices, because I think I've established that this is more about a series of choices. Being a good artist in this sense is understanding the world, understanding reality of color, lighting, all of that, and then making informed choices. It's not about being a genius, not about being good with a brush. Of course, that is something stylistic that will come later. But the first thing that elevates everybody is just making good choices. So, that being said, hope to see you next time on part 4, where we're painting more in color, getting the image ahead, showing you some more tricks, and then we do some artificial lighting, some post-process effects, some atmospheric blending, some tips and tricks that you can do, some color grading, and then maybe finish the image, and maybe it will take me another session to finish the image. I don't know yet, guys, but stay tuned for that. See you next time.